For decades, an idea has dominated the West. It is the idea of multiculturalism. It was presented as a beautiful and noble goal. All the peoples of the world could be brought together in one place. They would live side by side in harmony. This vision was sold to the public as a sign of progress. It was a mark of a modern, open, and tolerant society. Leaders in Europe and America embraced this idea with great enthusiasm. They believed it was the inevitable future. A future where old identities would fade away, replaced by a new, global sense of belonging. This was the promise, a grand experiment in social engineering that few dared to question. The problem is that this idea was based on a feeling, not on evidence. It assumed that goodwill alone could overcome centuries of history, culture, and tradition. It ignored the basic human instinct to seek out those who are like us. People feel comfortable with those who share their language, their faith, and their view of the world. To pretend these deep-seated loyalties do not exist is a profound mistake. The architects of multiculturalism believed that simply placing different groups together would automatically create a richer, more vibrant society. They did not stop to ask if these groups actually wanted to integrate, or if their core beliefs were even compatible with one another. This grand idea has now come face to face with reality. The dream is unraveling before our very eyes. Across the West, we see not harmony, but growing division. We see a society fracturing along ethnic and religious lines. The promise of a unified, happy whole has been replaced by the reality of competing identity groups. Each group increasingly views the others with suspicion and distrust. The shared story that once held our nations together is being torn apart. We were told this experiment would strengthen us. Instead, it seems to be weakening the very foundations of our societies, leaving them fragile and uncertain about their own future. The consequences of this failed experiment are now impossible to ignore. Social trust, the essential glue that holds any society together, is in steep decline. People no longer feel a sense of shared fate with their neighbors. When you do not share a common language, a common set of values, or a common understanding of right and wrong, it becomes difficult to cooperate. It becomes hard to agree on laws, on education, on the very direction of the country. The result is a low-trust society, where people retreat into their own enclosed communities. This is not the vibrant, integrated future we were promised. It is something far more desolate and divided. One of the greatest myths of our time is that all cultures are essentially the same. This is simply not true. Different cultures have different languages, religions, and moral codes. These are not minor details. They are fundamental to how people see the world and their place in it. A society that values individual liberty will inevitably clash with a culture that prioritizes group honor. A legal system based on secular, democratic principles will struggle to accommodate religious laws that claim divine authority. To ignore these deep, irreconcilable differences is to be willfully blind. It is to build a society on a foundation of wishful thinking. Language is more than just a tool for communication. It is the carrier of a culture. It shapes how we think, how we see history, and how we understand our identity. When large communities exist that do not speak the national language, they become isolated. They become islands within a country, unable and often unwilling to participate in the national conversation. This creates a natural barrier to integration and fosters a sense of separation. It prevents the formation of a shared public square where all citizens can meet as equals. Instead, we have a collection of separate conversations, each happening in a different tongue with little common ground. Religion adds another layer of complexity. For many people, faith is the ultimate authority. It dictates everything from diet and dress to law and morality. Western societies, for the most part, have moved towards a secular model. They have separated the church from the state. But when large groups arrive with the belief that religious law should govern all aspects of life, a conflict is unavoidable. Whose laws should prevail? Whose morality should be taught in schools? These are not small questions. They are profound disagreements about the very nature of society, and they create tensions that are difficult, if not impossible, to resolve. Ultimately, these differences in values lead to a society in a state of constant, low-level conflict. When there is no shared moral framework, every issue becomes a battleground. What one group sees as freedom, another sees as degeneracy. What one group views as justice, another views as oppression. This moral disagreement erodes the possibility of consensus. It makes politics bitter and divisive. It turns neighbors into strangers and strangers into adversaries. A society cannot long endure when its people do not share a basic understanding of what is good, what is true, and what is worth preserving. The friction becomes too great. The United States has long prided itself on being a melting pot. This was the idea that immigrants from all over the world would come and assimilate into a common American culture. They would learn English. They would adopt American civic values. They would become part of a new, unified whole. For much of its history, this model worked, albeit imperfectly. But in recent decades, the idea of the melting pot has been replaced by the multicultural model of the salad bowl. In this new model, groups are encouraged to maintain their distinct identities, languages, and cultural practices rather than assimilate into a shared national culture. This shift has had a devastating effect on social trust. Studies, including those by the liberal sociologist Robert Putnam, have shown a direct link between ethnic diversity and a decline in social cohesion. In highly diverse communities, people are less likely to trust their neighbors. They are less likely to vote, less likely to volunteer, and less likely to believe that others will deal with them fairly. This is true not only for trust between different ethnic groups, but also for trust within those groups. The presence of constant visible difference seems to trigger a primal instinct to withdraw and hunker down. We see the evidence of this collapse in trust all around us. We see it in the rise of identity politics, where loyalty to one's own ethnic or religious group is placed above loyalty to the nation. We see it in the increasingly segregated neighborhoods, schools, and social circles. People are retreating into tribes, seeking comfort and safety among those who look and sound like them. This is not a sign of a healthy, confident society. It is the behavior of a society that is becoming anxious, fragmented, and fearful of itself. The common ground that once united Americans is shrinking with every passing year. This lack of trust paralyzes a society. It makes it impossible to solve collective problems. How can we agree on healthcare, infrastructure, or national security when we do not trust the other side to act in good faith? Every proposal is seen through a lens of group interest. Every debate becomes a zero-sum game of us versus them. The very idea of a common good disappears, replaced by a clamor of competing demands from different identity blocks. The American experiment was built on the principle of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. The multicultural experiment has reversed this, creating a reality of ex uno, plurs, out of one, many. The relentless push for diversity at any cost has created a paradox. In forcing vastly different groups to live together under one roof, we have not created unity. We have created division. We have not fostered peace, but endless friction. It is time to ask a difficult question. What if the model itself is wrong? What if the path to a more peaceful and stable society is not through forced integration, but through a degree of separation? What if communities are stronger and more cohesive when they are composed of people who share a common heritage, language, and set of values? This is not a call for hatred or hostility. It is a call for realism. It is an acknowledgement of a simple human truth. People feel a natural affinity for their own kind. They build high-trust communities more easily with those who understand their cultural shorthand, who celebrate the same holidays, and who share the same moral instincts. To suggest that people might be happier and societies more stable if communities were more culturally homogeneous is not radical. It is simply an observation of how human beings have organized themselves for thousands of years. It is the multicultural experiment that is the strange and recent anomaly. Consider the alternative. A society of homogeneous communities could lead to higher levels of internal trust. Within these communities, people would be more willing to cooperate, to invest in public goods, and to look out for one another. Social capital would increase. A shared sense of identity would provide a strong foundation for community life. This does not mean these communities could not interact peacefully with each other. They could trade, cooperate on matters of mutual interest, and treat each other with respect, much as friendly nations do. But it would remove the constant wearing friction of trying to forge a single identity from incompatible parts. The great lie of multiculturalism was that our old, particular identities were worthless, and that a new universal identity was superior. The opposite may be true. It may be that strong, confident, and cohesive communities are the necessary building blocks of a stable nation. When we try to dissolve these identities into a bland, globalist soup, we lose something precious. We lose the trust, loyalty, and sense of belonging that make life meaningful. The experiment has been tried. The results are in, and they show that a relentless pursuit of diversity without any thought for cohesion leads not to utopia but to the slow, sad collapse of community itself.